My sister-in-law leaned across my mother-in-law's dining table, dropped her voice like she was handing me a grenade, and told me the will had been changed. "My son gets nothing," she said, waiting for my face to fall apart. I looked at her and said, "I already knew." Diane's expression did something I'll remember for the rest of my life. It curdled fast like she'd been robbed of the one thing she'd shown up to deliver. "You knew," she repeated, flat like the words tasted wrong in her mouth. "I knew," I said. "I've known for 8 months." To understand why that sentence landed the way it did, you need to understand what Diane had spent the last year building toward. My wife Renee passed away 14 months earlier, cancer, fast and cruel in the way it takes people before you're ready to lose them. Her mother Evelyn was 81, sharp as ever despite her age, and sat on an estate worth more than either of her daughters had ever openly discussed at family dinners. Diane, Renee's sister, had spent the year since the funeral inserting herself into Evelyn's life with a devotion that felt, to me, less like grief and more like strategy. She moved in to help. She started managing Evelyn's finances, since Mom gets confused sometimes. She started every conversation about my son Caleb, 16 years old and grieving his mother in his own quiet way, with a tone that suggested he was somehow a complication to be managed rather than a grandchild to be loved. I noticed the shift in Evelyn's attitude toward Caleb sometime around the 6-month mark. She stopped calling as often. She canceled 2 visits Caleb had been looking forward to for weeks. When I asked Diane if something was wrong, she'd shrug and say Evelyn was just processing, which felt true enough at the time that I didn't push harder. I should have pushed harder. 8 months ago, Evelyn's longtime attorney, a man named Harold Winslow who'd handled her affairs for over 20 years, called me directly, which he explained he wasn't technically supposed to do but felt he owed it to Renee's memory to make sure I understood what was happening. "Evelyn's had a new will drawn up," Harold told me over the phone, his voice careful, deliberate. "Not through my office. Through a firm Diane recommended." I only found out because Evelyn mentioned it in passing, thinking I already knew. Caleb's inheritance has been removed entirely and redirected into a trust that names Diane as sole trustee. I sat with that information for a long time before I decided what to do with it. I didn't confront Diane. I didn't confront Evelyn. I did something slower and I believed smarter. I started paying closer attention, the way you do once you realize the story you've been told isn't the whole story. I noticed Diane had started bringing Evelyn to appointments alone, no other family present, always with a folder of paperwork Evelyn would sign without reading closely, her eyesight not what it used to be. I noticed Diane's new car, a car that appeared roughly 4 months after she moved in with her mother, paid for, according to the dealership records Harold quietly helped me access in cash. I noticed that every time Caleb visited his grandmother now, Diane hovered in the room the entire time, steering conversations away from anything emotional, anything that might remind Evelyn of Renee, of grief, of the family she'd built before Diane decided to reshape it. I hired an elder law attorney of my own, a woman named Patricia Ames, who specialized in exactly this kind of situation: quiet manipulation dressed up as caretaking. She explained that changing a will wasn't illegal on its own. People are allowed to change their minds, but undue influence, especially involving an elderly person with documented memory changes, was a different matter entirely. One courts took seriously when the evidence held up. We built that evidence slowly over months, the way you build a case you can't afford to get wrong. Bank statements showing unusual withdrawals timed suspiciously close to Diane's new purchases. A pattern of isolating visits from other family members. Medical records, obtained through Evelyn's primary care physician with Harold's quiet help, showing early-stage cognitive decline that had been noted 11 months earlier, 2 months before the new will had been drafted. I told no one what I was building. Not my own family, not Caleb, not even close friends who might have accidentally let something slip. I wanted the truth fully assembled before anyone had the chance to bury it deeper. Which brings us back to that dinner table, Diane leaning in with her grenade, expecting to watch it detonate across my face. How could you possibly already know that? Diane demanded, her voice rising now, drawing Evelyn's attention from the next room. Because I've spent 8 months finding out exactly how it happened, I said, keeping my voice level the way Patricia had coached me to. Calm always lands harder than anger in rooms like this. The new firm you recommended. The cash car. The appointments you made sure nobody else attended. I know all of it, Diane. Evelyn appeared in the doorway now, confusion crossing her face, the specific confusion of someone catching only the tail end of a conversation that clearly mattered. What's going on? Evelyn asked. Mom, it's nothing, Diane said quickly. Just a misunderstanding. It's not nothing, I said gently, turning to Evelyn instead of Diane. Evelyn, do you remember signing paperwork about 7 months ago with a new attorney? One Diane recommended. Evelyn's brow furrowed, the particular furrow of someone reaching for a memory that wouldn't quite come into focus. There was some paperwork. Diane said it would simplify things. Do you remember what it said? A long pause. Not exactly. Diane explained it to me. That was the moment the entire room understood what had actually happened here. Even Diane, whose face had gone pale watching her own mother struggle to recall the details of a decision that had reshaped her entire estate. The legal case that followed took nearly 5 months. Patricia's evidence, combined with Harold's original tip and the documented cognitive decline predating the new will, was strong enough that Diane's attorney recommended settling rather than risk a judge's ruling on undue influence, which could have exposed her to criminal liability alongside the civil consequences. The settlement restored Caleb's original inheritance in full, removed Diane as trustee of any funds touching Evelyn's estate, and placed Evelyn's remaining care and finances under a court-appointed neutral guardian, someone with no personal stake in the outcome at all. Diane didn't speak to me for over a year after that. She barely spoke to Evelyn either, the visits that had once been so devoted thinning out to almost nothing once there was nothing left to manage. Evelyn, in her clearer moments, which came and went now with her declining memory, apologized to me more than once for something that had never really been her fault. I didn't understand what I was signing, she told me once, gripping my hand tightly on one of our visits, Caleb sitting quietly beside her. I just wanted to trust my own daughter. You did nothing wrong, I told her, and I meant it completely. Some people mistake love for an opportunity. That's not a failure on your part. Caleb turned 18 last spring, old enough now to understand the full weight of what had almost been taken from him, quietly, patiently, disguised as help. He doesn't talk about the money much. What he talks about instead is the 8 months I spent building a case in silence, never letting him see me panic, never letting Diane see me flinch, waiting until the truth was strong enough to stand entirely on its own. How did you stay so calm that whole time? He asked me once. Because getting angry loudly would have warned her I was watching, I said. Staying quiet let me see everything she thought nobody would ever find. I think about that dinner table sometimes, Diane leaning in with news she thought would break me, and the look on her face when she realized I'd already walked 8 months ahead of her. She wanted to watch me lose something that night. Instead, she watched herself lose everything she'd spent a year quietly building, one careful, patient discovery at a time.